Hi, I'm Robert Picirilli, Chairman of the Historical Commission of the National Association of Free Will Baptists. I sure do appreciate the opportunity to present this seminar, and I especially appreciate all of you who are listening in on your time during these strange coronavirus epidemic days we're involved with. I really hope you'll find this interesting. I can tell you that for myself, I find the subject matter not just interesting, but exciting. My topic today is the challenge of Free Will Baptist history. Believe me, it is a challenge in more than one way, and I just want to mention two particular ways in which this is a challenge. First of all, it's a challenge to us to uncover our real history and learn enough about who we are to have a sense of self-identity. And then secondly, it's a challenge to collect the kind of historical materials that we need in order to enable us to do that kind of research and know about our history. The truth is, by and large, there's a whole lot about our history we don't really know. And sometimes I think that lack of knowledge may very well contribute to some lack of sense of identity with the denomination as a whole. But anyway, let me just say a word about our history and the perspective we might take. Even among those of us who do some research and writing in the field of Free Will Baptist history, there have been and still are some differences of opinion about exactly what the nature of our identity is. Let me give you two or three different viewpoints so you'll know what I'm talking about in that regard. First of all, there are some among us who think that our identity can be found primarily in the history of what we call the Randall movement of Free Will Baptists in the North. That movement began with Benjamin Randall in New Durham, New Hampshire in 1780. But the fact is that the Free Will Baptists we know of today began in the South a lot earlier than that. Now, don't make any mistake about what I'm saying. It's very true that some of the Free Will Baptists that are a part of our National Association of Free Will Baptists today definitely do trace their origins to the Randall movement of Free Will Baptists in the North. That movement, started by Benjamin Randall, had the same name we have, but it was its own distinctive denomination. It was never connected with the Free Will Baptist people that we know of as the Free Will Baptist denomination as a whole in these days. In the years 1910 and 1911, the Randall movement decided to merge with the Northern Baptists, now known as American Baptists. And when they merged, they went out of existence as a distinctive denomination. Now, I say again, the history of some of our contemporary Free Will Baptists is tied definitely into the history of the Randall movement. But anyway, a second way of looking at our Free Will Baptist history is that some think that our identity is entirely the same as that of the American branch of the General Baptists of England, who in colonial days can be traced back to a man named Paul Palmer in eastern North Carolina in 1727. Now, once again, there is some truth in that, to be sure. There is a lot of that movement in our denomination as we know it today. But the history of our denomination isn't quite that simple. I think of it this way. I regard the English General Baptists in North Carolina under the leadership of Paul Palmer and those who followed him in the early 18th and early 19th century as being the mainstream of Free Will Baptist history. But since those early days, there have been several smaller streams that were not connected with the mainstream, who have fed into the mainstream. And the truth is that once one stream feeds into another, then neither one of those streams is quite the same as it was before. Well, there's also a third view of Free Will Baptist history. There are some thinkers who believe that our Free Will Baptist denomination today has no integrity of history or identity at all. They take what I've just said about various streams feeding into our history and take that to an extreme. And they think that we're a hodgepodge of various movements characterized by diversity and having very little, if anything, in common. I really don't believe that's an accurate way of looking at our history. At any rate, here's the truth as I see it, and I would like to you at least consider this approach. And I will acknowledge that my own understanding of Free Will Baptist history continues to grow as I learn more and more about details. Anyway, there is a mainstream, to use the figure that I've already introduced. That mainstream has flowed with integrity ever since the days of Paul Palmer in organizing the first church in coastal North Carolina in 1727. That mainstream was certainly shaped at first by the General Baptists in England who were migrating to the American colonies in the New World. But since that beginning, flowing into this mainstream have been several other smaller, more localized streams, not originally part of the mainstream. These have influenced the mainstream, and of course, they have been influenced by the mainstream. Let me just give you an example or two. Certainly, the largest of these streams that have fed into the mainstream of Free Will Baptists as we know them was made up by those in the Northern Randall movement that I referred to a moment ago, who pulled out of that denomination either shortly before or when it merged into the Northern Baptists. For the most part, those who are part of that stream that had its origins in the Randall movement included a significant portion, although not all of these, but a significant portion of the current day Free Will Baptists in Kentucky, in West Virginia, in Ohio, Illinois, some of Missouri, not all of it certainly, and some of Texas. I don't have time to tell you anything more about that particular stream, but it certainly is the largest one that has fed into our mainstream history. Other streams of Free Will Baptists that have flowed into the mainstream and made their contributions to who we are have just become known to us more in fairly recent years. One of these was a sort of a loosely connected movement of Baptists all across the South and even into the frontiers at the time, of people known as separate Baptists. Here's an example. Our present-day Cumberland Association of Free Will Baptists, which was founded in 1843 and occupies a large section of Middle Tennessee, was organized originally as the Cumberland Association of Separate Baptists. By the way, the story of that movement is to be found in the first of my 2 volumes on Free Will Baptist history, entitled Little Known Chapters in Free Will Baptist History. Well, here's another example. Even more recently, we have come to understand the story of Free Will Baptists in the state of Georgia. Nearly every Free Will Baptist association in that state, including the Free Will Baptist associations in Southeast Alabama and in West Florida, were originally part of a people known as United Baptists. This was a movement that began in Georgia along about 1850. They were very evangelistic, they grew rapidly, and spread their influence widely, including as far west as Texas, for example. The story of that movement is found in my 2nd volume, entitled Free Will Baptist History, Exploring Our Origins and Identity. Now, those origins in Georgia are clear enough, but there's still a lot we don't know. We can learn more about how they melded into the mainstream and how they were influenced and shaped by that mainstream as it was flowing out of eastern, North, and South Carolina and making its way south and westward. Now, those are just 2 of the streams that have fed into the mainstream of Free Will Baptists. No doubt there are others, but I won't take time to talk about any of those possibilities. But there is much to be learned. In time, if we can get enough people doing enough serious research, we may be able to identify every stream that has fed into the mainstream and played its part in making us who we are today. That's why I say this is exciting and it's rewarding to do this kind of research and help us identify ourselves. That's what I mean by a challenge. And I think it's important to do this to give us a better sense of identity. But now I want to change gears and talk to you about the work of the Free Will Baptist Historical Commission, which is closely related to what I've just been saying. Our work is to pursue and preserve our history. And that's the second big challenge that I mentioned. I've been a part of this work for many, many years now. And doing that work has led to the 2 volumes that I have mentioned that I've written so far. In those 2 volumes are many different individual stories. Each chapter is a story that's complete in itself about things that most of our people have very little, if any, knowledge about. I wish every Free Will Baptist everywhere would get those 2 volumes and read every single story in them. If you'll read them, I believe it'll help you feel a closer sense of identity with our denomination and with your sister churches. Well, as far as our commission is concerned, I want to say to you that there are 2 main areas of work that we're about, 2 of our big projects. Here they are. First of all, we maintain a website known as FWBhistory.com. I would suggest that you familiarize yourself with that website. I think you'll be amazed at what you can find there. The website is maintained by Eric Thompson, one of the members of our commission. There's much there that you can read, and even beyond what you can read on the website, there are many, many historical resources that are available to you right there on your computer. I'll come back to that in a bit. The second of our main parts of work as a commission is that we sponsor a Free Will Baptist Historical Collection. This is a full-fledged, well-organized library housed in its own quarters in the library at Welch College. But it belongs to the whole denomination. It belongs to you. For many years, I personally served as the unofficial curator of that collection. But now, in my old age, please don't feel sorry for me, I've turned that work over to Philip Morgan. He is managing the collection at this time. By the way, you can search that collection just like you would any library holdings at the Welch College website, starting with the library page on that website. Here's the thing that I want to emphasize in the rest of this seminar, and it relates to both of these primary projects of the collection, both to our pursuit of the knowledge about our history as well as the materials that are needed to enable us to make that pursuit. One of the things we're trying to collect is the minutes of all of the Free Will Baptist associations anywhere in the United States. Now just think about that for a minute, and you'll realize what a big undertaking that is. Let me give you an idea about that. There are more than 250 associations of Free Will Baptists in this country, including the state associations and the local associations. The names sometimes are different. Some of them call themselves conferences. Some may use the term quarterly meetings, but I'm going to refer to all of them as local or district associations. Some of those 250 have gone out of existence, but most of them are still in existence, and some new ones are being organized every now and then. Now, let's suppose that the average association of those 250 organizations is 50 years. They've been in existence 50 years. Now, a lot of them have been in existence a lot longer than that, several of them more than 100 years. And of course, there are some that are younger than 50. So I can't really tell you what the average is, but I think 50 gives us a good figure to work with and get an idea about the size of this challenge. Multiply 50 years times 250 organizations, and that'll give you a possible 12,500 sets of minutes that exist somewhere, or at least have existed. And we would like to have every one of them in our collection. That's what I mean by a challenge. Now, the truth is, we have more than 5,000 sets of minutes in our collection at the present, but as you can see, that isn't even half of the possibilities. Now, it's true that we've got minutes for some associations that go way back. Let me give you an illustration or two. The Cumberland Association in Middle Tennessee that I referred to a moment ago goes back to 1843. That means it's 177 years old. We're in fairly good shape for that association. We have well over 100 years worth of minutes for the Cumberland, including every year for the 1900s, 12 years in the 1800s, and all of those in the 2000s. I can give you another example, the Mount Moriah Association in Alabama, which is the oldest association in that state. It goes back to about 1851. We have all but one of the years for the 1900s. I hope we're going to get that one. And we have 8 years in the 1800s, and I think all or most all of the 2000s. I will have to add this, however, that for those in the 1800s and the early 1900s in the Mount Moriah, most of them are photocopies rather than original published copies. These were made possible for us by the late Brother Buck Gore in Mackshan, Alabama, who was kind enough 50 years ago to make photocopies for us in the collection. Now, I could give you a lot more examples, but I'll resist the temptation. What you need to understand, however, is that in spite of the good news about some associations, there are many, many associations of Free Will Baptists, old ones and recent ones, that we don't have much in the way of their minutes in the collection. I can think of a number of associations where we may not have more than 6 or 8 or 12 years of their minutes in the collection. I won't take time to give any examples of those that we are lacking minutes for, but be assured that there are many of them. As I said to you a moment ago, we don't even have half of the possible minutes of all of our associations. And I want you to know, my friends, these minutes are very important. Having them is a valuable resource for the preserving of our history. As I already said, there's a lot we don't know about our history, and these minutes help make it possible for us to learn. So the minutes are valuable, not monetarily valuable, but valuable for the information that they provide. I can tell you from my own personal experience that I could not have written about the origins of Free Will Baptists in the state of Georgia as I have recently, if it had not been for a lot of minutes in Georgia, some of them going back into the 1850s, that were collected by Geraldine Wade and others in the state. And they worked hard to gather those minutes and then made them available to us. So maybe you'd like to know just what we do with the minutes when we've got them. I'm glad you asked. Number one, we enter them into the historical collection just like a librarian would enter a book or a periodical in a well-managed library. That means several things. It means we know exactly what we have, we know where it is, and we know how to lay our hands on it anytime it's needed. Number two, we keep them safe and sound in special acid-free boxes to slow down the process of deterioration that all old documents experience. In other words, we take good care of them. We preserve them so that they'll be available indefinitely, we trust, and handled with care. Number three, we scan them electronically into digital form in computer files. That way, we can use the computer files to do the research and save the wear and tear on the old documents themselves. Number four, we convert those digital computer files into Word searchable format so that they can be searched quickly on the computer. By the way, that's a huge advantage when you're doing research in them. Number five, we store these digital files in more than one place in order to be sure that access will be maintained. We have a main historical commission computer in our library, and one copy is stored there. And then we store another copy of these files on a portable hard drive that can be kept in a different place and reserved as a backup in case it's needed. Number six, we then make a third copy of these digital files and place them on our FWBhistory.com website. That way, anyone, anywhere with a computer and access to the internet can see and read and study and research these minutes for himself or herself. Any of you who are watching right now can have access to these minutes at your personal computer. Number 7, finally, we bind the minutes into hardcover library volumes to store on our historical collection room shelves. That helps with long-term preservation and also makes research easier. Whenever we get enough minutes in a run without any gaps of several years to make a handy-sized library volume, we have them bound by a professional library binder. So as you can see, we treat these minutes as precious because they are precious to us. And we make sure then that they are going to be preserved and put to good use, and that anyone in the denomination will have access to them in one way or another. Now, I mentioned about making these digital files available on our website, FWBhistory.com. Please understand, this is a process, and we are in the middle of that process, not yet finished with it, but we're making good progress. In one sense, we'll never be finished because all these associations continue to meet every year and produce new minutes that we will want to collect. But anyway, we decided to go at the process of making these scans and digital files in alphabetical order by states. So we started with the state of Alabama, and including the state association and all of the local or district associations in the state, all of those minutes we have are now available online. At present, we're up to the M's in the states. So the Mississippi minutes, the state and the local associations, are already on the website. Starting with Missouri and going on through the rest of the states alphabetically, we're adding them as quickly as we can. As you can no doubt imagine, this takes up a lot of time and labor, but we're making good progress. Perhaps within a year or so, we'll be finished with the process, except as new minutes become available and are added. And while I'm at it, I do want to thank Brother David Crow and the North American Missions for underwriting the labor costs for this project, which we call our Minutes Project. Now, Eric Thompson puts the files onto our website. He's the manager of the website, as I mentioned to you earlier. But we use labor to do the scanning, and North American Missions underwrites the cost of that labor. And now let me just speak directly to you for a moment before we go. Here's the bottom line. We need help in this particular work we're involved in. These minutes don't collect themselves. So my challenge to you is this. Will you help us in this work? As chairman of the Free Will Baptist Historical Commission, I would like to be able to name one person in every local association in the country to serve as an agent of the Historical Commission for the purpose of gathering these minutes. There's no glory in this. There's no pay for it. By the way, there's no pay for any of us who work with the Historical Collection Commission. But there is the satisfaction of making an important contribution to the preservation and study of our Free Will Baptist history. I can tell you from experience, there are still a lot of old minutes out there that might be located and their information gained. I used to travel a lot for the college. And when I was in a given area on college business, I would take some time to try to unearth to locate minutes of the association in that area and was often successful. Now, I can't do that anymore, but perhaps you can. If you will volunteer to represent us within the bounds of your local association, will you please contact me and let me know that? If you will, I'll tell you exactly which minutes we already have and which ones we still need. I'll give you my tried and true methods for locating old methods and presenting the appeal to the people who have them. It isn't all that hard. It just takes some time, some persistence, and some deliberate efforts. If you'll be one of our volunteer agents in your area, would you please email me at this email? Furthermore, if you know somebody, anybody, that you think may have some old or even recent minutes of any Free Will Baptist Association, would you also email me and let me know about that? I'll be glad to get in touch with whoever that is that you know, if you'll just give me contact information for them. The point is, this can't be a one-person job. We need the help of many people. Please contact me. And now, in conclusion, let me just say a little bit more quickly about the Free Will Baptist Historical Collection, which, as I've told you, is managed by Philip Morgan at Welch. I think most of you just would not believe what a wonderful collection of Free Will Baptist material we have been and are gathering. Most of the material in the collection will fall into one of four categories. First are the minutes I've been talking about, and I won't say any more about them now. Second, we have an extension collection of Free Will Baptist publications from all over the denomination, which, by the way, we also bind when we get complete runs. Would you believe we have the only complete set of issues of the Free Will Baptist Gym in existence? That paper has been published in Missouri since 1929. We also have many more issues than that of the Free Will Baptist published in Ayden, North Carolina, including some scans of that publication that go back into the 1800s. You probably would not believe how many different Free Will Baptist publications there have been over these years. Some, no doubt, you've never heard of. You're aware, of course, of the promotional papers that have been published by our departments like Foreign and Home Missions and the college, as well as the papers that are published by our state agencies, state executive or promotional directors. By the way, there's some of the publications that we don't have, so we need help in that area just as we do in the area of minutes. And if you know of anybody who might have some of our old Free Will Baptist publications, please let me or Philip Morgan know. By the way, Philip's email address is pmorgan@welch.edu. Third, we have a huge collection of all sorts of loose papers, booklets, pamphlets, and so on that bear on Free Will Baptist history. These we keep in acid-free envelopes in those acid-free boxes in a special climate-controlled closet off the historical room in the Welch Library. There are thousands of pages of this kind of material, and many of them make an important contribution to our knowledge about some particular aspect, small or large, about Free Will Baptist history. And fourth, we have a large collection of Free Will Baptist books, either by Free Will Baptists or about Free Will Baptists. Hundreds and hundreds of them, old and recent, thick and thin, some by people long since dead, some by people still alive and kicking, some about the Free Will Baptists in the North, and some about the Free Will Baptists in the South and elsewhere. If there's a book by or about Free Will Baptist. We want it for the collection. Please keep us in mind. Anytime you contact us, we can tell you exactly whether we have it or not, or whether we would like to have it. Well, I'm just tired out trying to tell you about all the work of the commission and the interesting challenges that we face. What's my point? The bottom line is this: we need help. If you come across anything you think might contribute or be of use, please let us know. We can tell you whether we already have it or would like to. And especially if you will be willing to serve as an agent of our commission to locate and obtain minutes of the association in your area, I want you to get in touch with me. I'd love to hear from you. And thank you for joining me in this Free Will Baptist Historical Commission seminar. God bless you.